Okay, in this video we're gonna see how to solve some exercises related to the topic of Reductio Ad Absurdum. Reductio Ad Absurdum is one of the indirect methods for writing proofs of the axiomatic method. The general idea of Reductio Ad Absurdum is that instead of trying to prove your objective, like in this case you're not trying to prove what you are asked to prove. What you're looking for is to prove that any other thing is impossible, like that any other possibility is going to generate a contradiction, so it's not possible to think otherwise. That's how you work when you're trying to solve an exercise using Reductio Ad Absurdum. You try to prove that the other position will basically be absurd. That's where the name basically can come from. The main process for solving exercises with Reductio Ad Absurdum is basically you have to first assume the opposite of the thing you're trying to prove, and then using that assumption you need to find a contradiction. If there is a contradiction, then you know that what you assumed originally is not true, so the opposite should be true. The symbology we're going to use in this case are RAA, which is kind of like some sort of abbreviation for Reductio Ad Absurdum. We're going to use two arrows colliding with each other, that means contradiction, and three dots arranged in this way, that means that you're concluding something, or you're basically saying because of all of the things I said before, therefore I can conclude this. The way we're going to solve the exercises is following the same structure of two-column proof. And like I said, we're trying to find a contradiction in this case. We're not trying to find what we're trying to prove. What we're doing is finding a contradiction. Usually the typical contradiction that you're going to find is a fallacy. That means that two things that cannot be together are together. You can see that the table of values for this thing, and you're going to see that it's false everywhere. It doesn't matter whether the initial phrase that you have is true or false, it's still going to end to a fallacy. So when you find that you have, for example, in this case, you have P, but somehow in your process you also find the negation of P, when you have both of them, that's a contradiction, because you shouldn't have both of these things in a proof. You either have one or you have the other one, but you cannot have both of them, because both of those things, basically it's impossible to have both of them. So that would be a fallacy, that would be a contradiction, and that's how you would end an exercise of Reductio Ad Absurdum. Now that I kind of like explained quickly what this is about, let's try solving some exercises. Okay? The first exercise is that I'm trying to prove the negation of X. And I'm given two premises. The first one, if I have X, then I'm going to conclude Q. And the other one, if I have X, then I'm going to conclude negation of Q. If you see, there is no way where you can begin this exercise, because like in a direct method, you should copy one of these ones, and you should have maybe X or negation of Q, so that you can use ponendo ponens or tollendo tollens, but you don't have any of them. Okay? I recommend you to watch the video of the rules of inference and how to write two-column proofs before you solve or you watch this video, because I'm not going to explain the rules of inference. I already explained them before. So what we're going to do is to use the method of Reductio Ad Absurdum. So as usual, we're going to start the exercise by writing proof. And I'm going to underline this thingy. Now, because I'm using a different method, not the usual one, I'm going to have to explain which method am I using. So I'm going to say by Reductio Ad Absurdum. And then I'm going to begin. Okay? First step will be the assumption. Remember that you begin Reductio Ad Absurdum by assuming the opposite of what you're trying to prove. So the opposite of negation of X will be X. So let's assume X. Okay? I'm going to copy it from here. And how will you justify that thing? I will justify that thing because that is how you begin an exercise of Reductio Ad Absurdum. That beginning, we always call it the Reductio Ad Absurdum premise. It's an extra premise that you only have when you're working with Reductio Ad Absurdum. So, second step, I'm going to copy one of these ones. Okay, I'm going to copy the first one. I could copy the second one. Doesn't matter which one you use, because you can use both of them. Because I copy it from the premises, then the justification is that it's already given in the exercise. Okay. Now, if you notice, I have in step 1 x, and in the step 2 I have the, if I have x, then I will have q. That's a conditional. So, because I have the first one, I can use ponendo ponens to get the second one. So, I'm going to conclude in this case q. Why? Because I used ponendo ponens at steps 1 and 2. That's basically what I have to use to find q. Now, I can copy the second premise. The second premise is also a conditional that tells me if I have x, then I would have the negation of q. And that is also given because it's part of the premises of the exercise. Now, if you notice step 4 and step 1, step 4 tells me if I have x, then I can conclude negation of q. And I already have x in step 1, so I can use that x as a justification to say that I'm going to conclude negation of q, and that will be also ponendo ponens, but in this case with steps 4 and step 1. So I'm going to put step 1 and step 4. Okay. Now that I found negation of q, you might think like, okay, what do we do next? If you notice, step 5, I'm going to color it in red for now, and step 3, we have q and we also have the negation of q. That is a fallacy, because you cannot have both things at the same time. Either you have q or you have negation of q, but in the proof that I'm writing, I used all of the rules, everything is logical in here, but I found that I have this incoherence. I have q and I have negation of q. So that's a contradiction. I shouldn't have those things. So what I'm going to put next is the symbol of contradiction to explain that I found a contradiction. So I'm going to put the symbol of contradiction, and then I'm going to say that I have q and I also have the negation of q. I have q and I also have the negation of q. I'm going to copy the symbol and from here. Q and negation of q. That is not technically, it's kind of like a step, but technically not number 6. Okay, I hate when Word does this thing. And I could explain, kind of like say the same thing here. It doesn't matter. Like I could say like contradiction at 3 and 5. That's kind of like what I have. And once that I proved that I have a contradiction, I can conclude that what I did in the beginning was wrong. It was wrong to think that x was true. So x is not true. What would be true then? The opposite. And what is the opposite of x? What I was looking for, the negation of x. If x is not true, then the negation of x is going to be true. So I can conclude the negation of x. And that will be kind of like the end of my exercise. I could say like by Reductio Ad Absurdum. I could do that. And I'm going to put the symbol that we usually put to say that I finished an exercise. The symbol with the box and the x. This box with the x. Now I leave it there, and that will be my exercise. All I'm going to do next is eliminate this thing off the table, and that's my exercise. Okay? We're going to continue solving a couple more of exercises of this in the next video.